All right, good afternoon. All right, well, thank you very much, Francis. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm John Alessio with Red Hat, and I'm delighted to talk about kind of our customers' transformation and how we work with them on their digital transformation. So let me just see what we got up. Let's see what's coming. There we go. All right, so what I wanted to start with is, I've been at Red Hat now almost 5 years. Prior to joining Red Hat, I was actually with IBM for about 27.5 years in the software group. So I have a good familiarity probably from kind of both bookends of my career here in some of the topics that you guys have been working with over the last day or so. And what I wanted to start with is, as we look at a number of our customers and a number of the projects that we're doing, what our customers are telling us pretty much universally across the board is that they are going through a very large change. And, you know, some of them characterize it as, John, we're not trying to digitize what we're doing. We're actually trying to go digital, which is something very, very different. And when we work with them, what we really are trying to understand from them is how that kind of presents itself to them from a standpoint of, you know, what's changing in their business. Because if you look at virtually all industries, government included, there's a very, very large transformation going on. Expectations from customers or citizens are changing all the time. And at the same time, technology is becoming a great enabler, but technology alone doesn't get the job done. And so a lot of our lessons that we've learned has really been around how to apply people, culture, process, and technology together to really achieve that digital transformation for our clients. And so one of the buzzwords in the industry that's been going around now for several years has been really around DevOps. And DevOps is a tool, it's a capability that our customers are looking to build in order to help with their digital transformation. And it's not something, I think the key thing that I always talk to my customers about is, it's not something you can just go buy. It's not a product code that you can just go select off the menu. I want to go buy DevOps. It's actually something you learn. It's a capability. It's a set of tools that you apply. It's a new cultural approach to how you're running your business today. And so we believe and have seen, and I'll take you through a couple of case studies toward the end of my talk, of customers that have really applied these concepts to help them with their overall business transformation. And so if you look at, you know, how are we doing as an industry? Forrester did a study just last year, and in their study, they said about 50% of the companies that they surveyed are on their journey to DevOps. Some are quite far along, some are in pilot stage. But what about the other 50%? Why aren't they on their journey? And how can a company like Red Hat help these companies either propel forward their journey towards DevOps or begin their journey if they're one of those 50% that have not yet started? Because the customers, again, their focus is around, they want to transform their business. And this DevOps approach, it's an enabler to their business. So we wanted to understand for our customers, what inhibitors were they seeing in their transformation? So about a year ago, Red Hat did a study with Harvard Business Review. And in the study, it's a great report. We can provide you with content of the report. It's quite a voluminous report, but it's one of the key points that I think is relevant for this talk today is we surveyed customers and said, what barriers are you seeing to your digital transformation? And you often hear that skills and technology are an inhibitor. But as you can see over in the far right on the screen, that's only 30% of the challenge that our clients told us in this survey. And in this survey, we had people literally from, it was over 700 customers across the globe, all industries included, including public sector and healthcare, but as well as, you know, financial services, manufacturing, insurance, and so forth. But look at the far left-hand side of the screen. Over 55% of those customers said culture was a key inhibitor to their transformation. And then in the middle, process. So it really kind of brings home this idea of people, process, and technology together provides the secret sauce for your business transformation. The report kind of also goes through, in a good amount of detail, those companies that have made a really good transition from a digital transformation perspective, and what cultural attributes do they exhibit. And so cultural attributes like collaboration and meritocracy rate very, very high for those companies that have successfully made the transformation, and rate much lower for those that have not. So I think it's a good report to kind of take a look at. So the questions my customers come back to me and say is, okay, so how do we start? We realize that we are being disrupted in our industry, right? And if you can think about it, think about just, I used Uber to get here from DCA earlier today, right? Uber is a company that clearly has disrupted that transportation industry, kind of run it on its head. And you can think of, well, why does Red Hat have a particular point of view around this transformation? Well, and if you thought back to, Red Hat's now about a 25-year-old company. And you can think of 25 years ago when we created that first release of RHEL, Red Hat Enterprise Linux, we actually disrupted the software industry, because actually giving away free software was very transformational at its time for the software industry. And so we believe that we've built some capabilities within the Red Hat organization to help with transformation based on kind of our business model as an enterprise software company. And so when we talk to customers, we talk to them about how you can start your transformation. Now, sometimes, and I would say it's very rare, that you can start it really totally top down. And you can do it if you have a very strong mandate from the C-suite and you have a very strong budget. It could be successful, but I will tell you, virtually every project that we do in my organization with our clients is done bottoms up or top down and bottoms up at the same time. It's typically the ones that are much, much more successful come bottoms up. They come bottoms up much more similarly, quite frankly, to how we work in our open source communities, where it's the best ideas that win, where you start with small projects, you understand the problem you're solving, you build on top of that, and you start to create more and more capability. So this bottoms-up approach almost every time wins out. If you can have the tops-down support, clearly it can augment it, but we generally recommend this bottoms-up approach. And the idea of starting small really, really does work. You hear the terms agile, and really starting this type of cultural transformation in your organization small, get a key win, get the win behind your back, build on top of that, and then you will be much, much more successful. And we've seen this time and time and time again. And so for us, we think about our open source culture. It's more than just about a software development model. Red Hat is an enterprise software firm with an open source development model. And so that open source development model has taught us many, many concepts that I think are quite helpful for this cultural transformation. You can see we work in communities. Transparency is a key thing we do. Open standards, we solve problems faster. And at the bottom of the screen here, you see those attributes. If you take it back to the Harvard Business Review report that I mentioned earlier in the talk, each of those capabilities, collaboration, transparency, inclusivity, adaptability, and community, were rated much, much higher and more prevalent in those companies that rated themselves high on digital transformation, and were rated lower by those companies that said they either had not begun their transformation or were in the very early stages. And so we do believe that these foundations are very, very key to making this cultural transformation that customers need to make. And so, go one more slide here. And so About 3.5 years ago now, every year, Red Hat runs what we call our Strategic Advisory Board. It is a culmination of about 20 to 25 customers from across the globe, every industry included, including public sector, where we get together and we get feedback from our customers on the strategic direction for Red Hat, but also our product plans. They share with us their challenges and opportunities, and they give us input for our next year of investments that we're going to make as a company. And so in 2015, I'd just been at Red Hat about a year, almost to the day, in fact. We had the meeting, I remember it very vividly, we were in London, and what our customers were telling us at that time were many of these customers were very much thought leaders and had already begun their journey around digital transformation. And what they were telling us is, they said to me as the services leader, they said, John, we want Red Hat to be more prescriptive. We're looking for you to better share how you all approach the open source development model, something that you all have experienced now for a couple decades plus. We need for you to help, and this is their terminology, package up that Red Hat DNA and make it available to us to help us with our cultural transformation. Because many of these customers were on that journey to digital transformation. They were either being disrupted or they were anticipating being disrupted or were trying to disrupt the industries that they were in. And so they said to me, you need to put together some type of offering to help us with this cultural transformation, because if we don't have this kind of capability, it's either going to take us longer or we won't achieve our business objective. And so we worked together. We launched then it was probably about 9 months later at what was the Austin OpenStack Summit, a new offering from the services organization called Red Hat Open Innovation Labs. And what our Open Innovation Labs offering is there for is to help customers with their digital transformation, with their movement towards DevOps, and quite frankly, to share with them the methods, tools, processes, and capabilities that Red Hat has had for many, many years from our open source culture, and share that with our customers in a kind of a residency style engagement so that they walk out of this engagement with some of the Red Hat DNA that they talked about kind of in some of their team members. And the reason why this is so important is at the same time, the technology now Red Hat is starting to offer is becoming very much a supporting capability for this digital transformation. So when you start to think of some of the technologies around containers and Kubernetes and our OpenShift portfolio, many of our customers are now looking to either modernize their existing applications, lift and shift them to a new infrastructure, or they're looking to develop completely new capabilities as part of their digital transformation. And the largest customers, of course, need to do both. And so this ability to help them accelerate their innovative ideas, do it in a way that leverages best practices from the open source community, things we've been doing for years, packaging it up so it's much more consumable was very appealing to our customers. So how do we do it? So 3 key things that we do. First of all, we always start with what we call a discovery phase, where we actually sit down with the client and we work with you on either what your business issue or challenge is or what your new opportunity is that you're looking to pursue. Out of that, we come out with a plan that's a thoughtful plan on from where you are today, where you're trying to get to, and oftentimes, our Innovation Labs capability is a part, it's not the whole plan, it's a very key component to the overall plan. And the reason why it's a key component is most customers, go back to the chart, 55% said cultural transformation is an inhibitor to their digital transformation. And so what we do in this engagement is we do a bunch of pre-work for the customers relative to their technical skills. And then we create a project with them, typically 6 to 12 weeks in duration, so it is time-boxed. And what we want to come out of that engagement with is some minimal viable product that they can then leverage back at their own shop to then propel forward their digital transformation capability that they're looking to achieve. And so this experimentation phase is very, very important because it helps them prototype. It helps them learn very, very quickly. The immersion of your team, we work side by side with our clients in a paired programming model. Again, in a model in which we're sharing all the best practices around things like event storming, priority sliders, additional capabilities from an innovation perspective. We create social contracts for people who are in the engagement. We set up quick feedback loops, typical to agile approaches. And we concluded at the end of the engagement with a demo day. And the key thing about the demo day, I'll share with you a personal example. Key thing with the demo day is it's not Red Hat sharing the code, sharing the deliverable. It's the customer sharing the deliverable with their executive sponsors. And so one of the clients, this was probably about a year after we had the engagement, I tried to get to most of the demo days because it's a great opportunity for me to see what innovation or capability the team created. And it's a great opportunity for me to get feedback from the customer executives on, hey, how did this work? What worked well? What could be better? What are your plans to move forward? And so to kind of talk about the power of this, I can't say who the client is, but I can talk about the experience. So one of the clients we worked with was here in the States. It was a healthcare customer, and we had the demo day scheduled for like Wednesday or Thursday of the week. The CIO asked the local sales rep and said, hey, can John come in the night before and have dinner with me? I'd like to have dinner and share some feedback. And I was able to do so. So we have dinner in New York the night before. And so we're sitting down, I'm meeting with the CIO, and we're having a nice dinner. And he said, well, John, I have to tell you, I have very low expectations for tomorrow. And I'm like, okay. And he said, you know, the team that is working in this engagement, I'm not really sure that they're going to make this transformation. I'm not sure they're capable of making this transformation from a cultural perspective, a process perspective, a skills perspective. I hope so, but I have my doubts because we've tried to make other transformations before, and this team has just not been successful. So, wind forward now, we're at the next day. Remember, I told you when we do the demo day, it's not Red Hat doing the presentation, it's the customer presenting to the customer executive that sponsored the project. They blew it out of the water. The project there was really focused on creating a better way to more iteratively develop software, release it, and leverage CI/CD pipelines and the products and the capabilities around that with a small kind of applet that the team developed. The CIO was blown away because his team hit the ball out of the park, and his comment to the team was, I don't even believe that this is the same team that started this 8 weeks ago. So this was a CIO that said, you know, I don't think this team's going to make it. They went through this approach. They came out of it really kind of beyond his expectations. And it was, the team worked really, really hard. I mean, when I went back and talked to my team afterwards, his team worked very, very hard. They leveraged all the, you know, training we gave them from a technical perspective, but they really immersed themselves in the approach that we gave them and really, really took it to heart. And so it is possible to take, of course, your best team, but it's also possible maybe to take a team that maybe has struggled with these kinds of transformations in the past, put them through this process, and in this case, it worked quite well. So you can see here, I have a few slides here that show you kind of how we do things. So this is showing kind of prototyping, experimentation. This is actually a customer that was at our London Innovation Lab. The one thing we did do when we announced this approach is we created some physical locations where we do these engagements. Boston here in the US, London for the European team, Singapore for our Asia Pac team, and then we'll be launching next month Sao Paulo, Brazil for our Latin America clients as well. But I will tell you, about 90% of the engagements we do about 2 or 3 blocks from the customer themselves. because the customer really wants them kind of out of their core location so they can do this type of experimentation and not get pulled into their day-to-day job, but still kind of have their normal daily commute. That's actually a more popular approach. And so we have a whole approach on how we set up what we call a pop-up lab, which is how we do kind of most of these engagements. So this shows you experimentation. This shows you immersion of your team. And this was really great. We did an engagement for a customer in Australia, which was a kind of a mid-sized bank. They were very kind of, I'll say, very happy with kind of way many of their business processes were looking, but they were looking to better compete to increase their market share. And what the CEO talked about after their first engagement was, he said, I can't believe this is my IT team. People are up, they're working together. It's the business and IT working together. People are engaged and they're excited about what they're doing. And you can see this kind of immersion in the team is some of the key approaches we use to get people engaged in creating this, really this innovation to help with the digital transformation. And this just shows you, again, some more pictures from both our Boston lab as well as our London lab, different clients and their engagements, and kind of how it gives you a feel for kind of how these engagements work. So I think it's always good to take a look at some examples on kind of what the outcome can be. So the first example here, I can't say who the customer is, but I will tell you kind of a spoiler alert here. This customer will be with me in Boston at our summit in May to tell their story as part of my keynote there. So this is a global manufacturer. You're all familiar with them. Their challenge was the following, and it wasn't an IT problem that we solved here. This was a problem teaching them how to think differently. That's what the customer's exact words to me. His name is Michael. He said, John, Red Hat has taught us how to think differently. The problem they were running into is how they do testing of their products. And the way they test their products in the physical world, they ran into real limitations. And so what we reimagined with them in their Innovation Lab engagement is how they could augment the physical testing with virtual testing, get more test cases, more use cases, more repeatability to improve their products. And so you can see a manufacturer that was very steeped for many, many decades in their process and how they test their products, find a way through I believe this was a 10-week Innovation Lab engagement, to change their product testing processes, which obviously is a very, very core function to any global manufacturer. And so you can see they've applied modern technology, new ways of collaborating, and virtualized simulation and testing helped them to remove limitations that they had before in the physical environment. This was a really cool project. Another customer here in the public sector, closer to home here, we worked with this customer to help them kind of come up with an approach so they could be much, much more responsive to the business by increasing the speed of delivering new software capabilities out into their environment. We obviously leveraged lots of technology like CI/CD, but we leveraged a lot of cultural transformation and capabilities to help them make this move as well, because again, it's not just about this nice new tool and this nice new capability from a software perspective, but it's about changing the way you actually do the business, changing the way you develop the software, changing the way you get the requirements so that you can be much, much more responsive to the business. This customer actually will be speaking at Summit as well. And then third, this was one of our early engagements here in North America. It's also a government agency here for healthcare. And their challenge was to be much, much more responsive to the ever-increasing complex needs of their citizens. And they also had a very, very interesting requirement here. And the requirement was they had very limited funding in this first phase. And if they could show substantive progress in this first phase, they could, of course, earn the right to get more funding. And so what we were able to do is, create this, work with them, create this self-organizing team. create this portal that shows a capability that had never existed before in this government entity. And with the kind of integration to the back end that we were able to show, not only were they successful, but they got the additional funding. We've now done, I think, 3 Innovation Lab engagements, if I'm not wrong, with this particular client to move forward their initiatives with their citizens. And so I think 3 really good examples, different industries in different locations, on how this approach, where we bring forward all of the methods, tools, processes, and capabilities that we've built up for many, many years in open source development, have created a services offering around it that's repeatable, it's thoughtful, it's directive, and in a relatively short period of time be able to work with our clients on their digital transformation to address that 55% that came up in that study that said culture is one of the reasons we're not transforming. And then remember, the 43% said business processes are a reason that they're not transforming as well. So how do you get started? How can Red Hat help you get started with your transformation? Well, first off, as I mentioned before, all of these engagements that I mentioned start with what we call a discovery session. We come in, work with you, roll up our sleeves, and really understand what problem are we trying to solve, or what business opportunity are you trying to capitalize on in your environment. And we build with you a very thoughtful plan that will include training, it will include education, it will include sharing of best practices, and it will likely, that doesn't always have to include, but can include our Innovation Labs capability. So I hope you found this helpful. It's been really, really great to spend time with you all this afternoon. Thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of your day.